Okay, I just got to maybe just give a bit of a intro to myself. And Tony just walked in here. Tony was a troop in 77 Parachute Battalion, and I was a young second lieutenant then. And maybe this is the right place to say it, because all the Soties are in this part of the world, not up on that side. So, when we arrived from infantry school as young second lieutenants and corporals from now going to become paratroopers, and once we became paratroopers and paratroop qualified, then all the oaks said, no, now we want to go to the recce. And especially all the ropes wanted to become recce. And at the end of the day, there were only two guys who actually then became recce. Peter Bowles, who died a couple of years ago of cancer, and myself. So the two Soties were the only two oaks who became Special Forces operators out of that whole bunch. It's just I can share that story because I don't have to worry about all the other oaks in Gauteng. You know, it's an interesting thing when we were in the army. And people sometimes ask me the question, you know, how did we get together and integrate? And, you know, if you go back and think back at your national service days, when you started in basics, we all got our hair cut, take away your identity. And the only place you could really keep your identity was in the mess. And the second place you could keep your identity was church parade. So in the mess, if you went into the mess, all the Dutchmen sat on that side. All the Soties sat over here. The Jews sat in the corner. And all the Jehovah's Witnesses were in jail. That's how good. And church parade, you know, you had the NG Kerk, that amount. You had the Vormende Kerk, that amount. The Gereformeerde Kerk, that amount. The Anglican Church, this amount. And the Roman Catholics, this amount. But the Roman Catholic Church was all the chicks were. So the migration towards Roman Catholic. Anyway, so let me dive into this. Before I dive into this, just a bit of my background. I started in Parachute Battalion after I did my junior leaders course in infantry school, and end of 76 I got to Parachute Battalion, and I was a second lieutenant with the A company that came in at that year. I did my jump course with that bunch, and we did our first bush tour with that bunch, and then August 78 I was pulled out, and I became the founding. Myself and Kobus Wynn became the two founding officers of the Pathfinders, and we took that forward. I then went and did my degree at the military academy for 3 years. All my vacations I spent in the bush, sometimes in Rhodesia and some other places. And then when I got back to Parachute Battalion, spent some time with the company, and Parachute Battalion sent me to the recce to go and do some courses there, and I came fourth on the courses. So I said to myself, you know what, maybe I should also go there, because maybe I should do this. And eventually I decided to go, and I managed to get through selection, became a team leader at 4 Recce, and eventually I became the OC of 4-2 Commando. 4-2 Commando, 4-1 Commando was the main operations group, and in that group we had the boat group, the raiding group, and the dive team. And then I was responsible for 4-2 Commando, for all seaborne training, and then just by pure nature of my position, I was also responsible for a large number of seaborne operations that we conducted around and things like that. And I had the privilege to spend some time in the then Zaire, because we were training Mobutu Sese Seko's presidential guard. And I also spent some time with Bob Denard in the Comores, when he was looking after the Comores. We had to do an assessment. Our main job there was to go and understand how can we use the Comores as springboard operations into Tanzania. And the main objective in Zaire was to see how we could use and potentially operate out of Zaire into Tanzania. And the cover story was that we had to look and find out how well Bob Denhart's presidential guard was looking after the president. So we evaluated all the options, and we gave the presentation and things like that, and we left after about 3 weeks. And a couple of months later, we saw in the newspaper that the president of the Comores had been killed, been assassinated. The only option we did not evaluate is that the presidential guard would kill the president. Anyway. But enough of that. Let me get into this. What I'm going to talk to is this thing, but I want to introduce it with this bit of a video. And this is our training. Selection. Some of the luck stuff. And a lot of it is now focused on the water. Now goes into 5 recce. These vehicles that you see here are the vehicles that were involved in Bangui.
One more depending on a friend, yet we all look away, people pretending everywhere. It's just another day, there's bullets flying through the air. And they still carry on. We watch it happen over there, and then just turn it away. We must stand again. There's no
Special Forces School, the building. And that's really close to our heart. Just on the Bangui thing, I thought maybe I'll just share with you, is that as our guys were retreating, the French Foreign Legion was there, but they did not get involved in this battle. And the French troops were there. They did not get involved in this battle. We lost 13 guys there between paratroopers, medics, and special forces, current defense force. The battle they fought there, we have not in our era fought. where it got to a point where the Oaks were completely just getting out of ammunition and everything like that, and continuously on the retreat. William Dixon will tell the story one day. However, the interesting thing is that when the South African forces were eventually flown out, the French Foreign Legion and the French troops lined the entrance into the C-160s, and they first took the bodies in, and then the troops went in. And the Foreign Legion guys, as the sign of respect, sang Non Regret, which is the anthem of the French Foreign Legion, out of respect for what the South Africans had done there. So if people think that our army is up to shit, there's certain groups in our army which are really still there. Special Forces, we have, at the end of this month, our 50th anniversary. Everything is done in conjunction with current Special Forces and SASPA, our veterans organization. Everything is planned together and executed together. At last weekend, we had one of the black operators, he passed away from cancer. All the generals were at his funeral. And after the funeral, all those black generals were at Steel Helmet Shellhole, which has become very close to Special Forces, as coming for drinks and things like that after. Anyway, enough of that. What I want to talk about today is probably one of the most controversial operations when you look at politics point of view, but probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, and the biggest seaborne operation that was ever conducted by a Special Forces organization since World War I. And this happened on the 4th of June 1986 into the Namibe Harbour. But this whole operation had quite a bit of a lead into it. So let me just take you through that. It's the largest clandestine force ever deployed by the South African Navy. The largest amount of special forces that were ever deployed. Viewed by many in Russia as probably the most successful operation against them since World War I. And they termed the operation Operation Sea Fox, and attracted the highest international nonsense from the UN in what they said afterwards. Just as a bit of an introduction to the recce's then, we had Special Forces headquarters, 1 recce, 2 recce, which was the Citizen Force Unit, 4 recce, which was in Langebaan, the Seaborne Operation, and 5 recce, which was in Phalaborwa. Phalaborwa mainly all the black soldiers, 1 recce and 4 recce totally integrated between all the people. And this is what it is now. Special Forces headquarters. We got the Special Forces school now at Walmanstal. 4 recce, 5 recce, and the Special Forces supply unit. Just a quick intro into 4 recce. So if you look at there, I'll just talk about it quickly. But originally all the recce operations were run out of Durban, 1 recce. And there was a C group, and then it was decided that they will then form their own seaborne operation group, and that was decided on to go to Langebaan. Langebaan 78, the base was established. And from there we ran. Up until the end of 89, there were only 45 qualified seaborne operators that worked out of 4 recce. So it's a very small group of people. Our sphere of operations, if you look at the slide, Dar es Salaam, the first seaborne operation ever took place in 1972. Jan Breitenbach, Koos Moorcraft were 2 of the key guys that were on that operation to go and see some things in Tanzania. The rest of it was in Mozambique and obviously into Angola, and everything done in conjunction with the Navy. So the seaborne operator, if you go through your operator cycle, it takes you a year to qualify as a Special Forces operator. Those that get selected to go to 4 recce then go through a further 6 months of training to become a seaborne operator. Just to give you an idea of numbers, 1983-84, I was responsible for the major intake. We had national service coming in. We put out flyers into the national service group for people to come in. We got 1,800 responses. We did a paper selection. I called up 325. Of the 325 going through a pre-selection week, I took 40. Out of the 40, at the end of the year, 4 guys qualified.
So,
That was the ratio that we got into. So the seaborne operator really had to get an understanding of the sea, how to work with boats, how to work with the Navy, and then further specialization into the diving and underwater demolitions and all that type of stuff. Just a quick view of some of the seaborne training, diving, working with the boats. These boats that you see, the twin-engine Barracudas, were a copy of Shark Sports boats. The Ace Cat that they built in those days. Not the Cat, the Ace boat. The Cat is double, but it was built by Ace Craft. And
bulletproof.
say again?
It was the bulletproof one.
That was bulletproof, that. And we had 2 sets of motors. We either used 90 Yamahas or the 125s. And then we had some of the other boats, and later on it's grown into semi-rigids. And we also used a lot of inflatables, because inflatables were the only boats we could use, or submarines. Everything that you see there, all the pictures, like in that video, everything there, training during the day, learning during the day. You can only photograph that thing during the day. Every single operation rehearsed completely at night. Learn what we want to do, and then we rehearse everything at night. So everything, beach landings, beach pickups, everything at night. Because that's our operating time. Just the relationship with the Navy. On the submarine, strike craft. You'll notice on the strike craft at the rear, typical strike craft has 2 75mm cannons. The Blythe ramps were put on, so they took the cannon off, put the Blythe ramp on if we were going to use the Barracuda boats. There's just a picture from the deck to the 2 boats. We worked with Tafelberg, we worked with Drakensberg, PP before it was sunk, President of the new Tafelberg and Drakensberg, and then obviously all the submarines. So let me talk, I want to get into Side and Drosdy. And this is also a unique operation. In a lot of the Special Forces operations, the guys went in and did a recce and sent a team in to go and understand what was going on. And many operations, that was the end of it, or as they did the recce, they went in and continued on with the operation. This operation was one where the recce was done in February, and we came out, and then we went in May. So we did everything, and all our planning and everything was defined by then. So Special Forces were tasked to inflict maximum disruption to all the enemy supply lines which originated out of Namibe. Now if you go to the 86, 87 era, Upa, Paka, Smoke Shell, all those operations were supported of stuff coming through Namibe. All the ammunition and food was coming through this harbour. So if you look at this map here, you can see in that period there was a huge work down by the Angolan forces, the Cuban forces, and supported by the Russians and East Germans down towards the south, mainly to get rid of Savimbi, but the South Africans were very much in support, and we, all the things happened there. I'm not going to go into the politics, but that's where all the things were happening. The main supply lines were coming out of Lobito, Namibe, and some coming out of Luanda. So operation side, 16th of February to the 14th of March. That was the boat we used. Johanna, Jan Rabe was the commander. This was my team. And you take a note of the team. Captain, major, captain, sergeant, corporal. That was the team. That's how we made it up. Martin Kelly went to school here. Michael House. He was with us as an operator, and he is the only doctor operator who actually was involved physically in operations. The other doctors that qualified as operators worked in support of, but Martin Kelly was one of the only guys who actually was involved in operations.
Is he the guy that said that you guys are crazy, you're going to die?
Something like that.
In that book?
Yes. Okay. So the 18th of February, we left Donkergat, 1,500 nautical miles up to target area. We were submerged during the day, and at night we used to come up and snorkel. The 26th to the 28th of February, we did a recce on Lobito, where we went in with the inflatables. We were going in the first night, and now you spent quite an amount of time on the submarine already. And we did our prep, and then the submarine starts running in, and we were going to launch. And we had the boats up, the motors on, the fuel on, everybody black is beautiful, and ready to go. And I went up to the conning tower just for final markings and things like that. And as I came down the conning tower and got onto the casing, I looked up at the conning tower, and there was a storm coming in, and there was St. Elmo's fire going over the whole conning tower. And that's that yellow-blue flame because of arcing and things like that that's happening. Over all the guys' heads over there and things like that. And I made a decision right there. Stop. Back up. We'll come back tomorrow. And I want to bring this to another point. And this is a very serious point. There is no general in this South African Defence Force and that South African Defence Force that can tell any mission commander, you go to that bush and you lay up at that bush at that time. And then leave all your spoor to that bush because you stuffed up on the time. The mission commander is the man who makes the call, nobody else. And those of you who understand what I'm saying, understand what I'm saying. Then the 4th of March, we came in and did the recce on Namibe. Oh, so the next day we went and did the recce there. We sent in the divers, the swimmers, to go and take photographs of the cement factory in amongst all the ships, checking the ships out and things like that. With the inflatable inside the harbour with amongst all those ships. And you know, it's your training that comes back to you. You learn at a very early stage that if you lie in the water and you are camouflaged, if you are standing there, we lay in PE Harbour, the guys were looking for us. Where you are sitting now, we were lying in the water watching you. Didn't see us. And you've got to learn to build the confidence to be able to do that. And that comes through training. So we did the recce on Namibe, on Lobito, and then on the 4th of March we came down and did the recce on Namibe. So what we had to go and recce, we had to go and recce the steel jetty, which is also the LP gas jetty. We had to go and look at the Benga River. We had to get a good view of the oil farm, and we had to get a good view and take a lot of measurements in the harbour. So we went in, launched, went in with the inflatable. We went and checked out the iron ore jetty. We went and did some checks on what we could see of the oil farm. Then we went down to the Benga River. We checked that whole area out. And then while we were chugging along to the to the harbour, just outside the surf line. Must have been just after midnight. And there was a lot of noise in town. I mean, you know, you're just on the other side of the surf line. A lot of noise in town, and the next thing there was gunfire. I got such a skrik, I fell off the boat. Back in the boat. Meanwhile, the Oaks are having a party and this was going on, but it just shows the level of tension that exists when you are working in those type of scenarios. Eventually we got to the harbour and I sent the swimmers out again and they measured everything, and then we recovered and we ran out to the submarine. So everything is done, no radio comms. We have radios with us, but no radio comms. We run in on a bearing and we run out on a bearing and time. And when we get to the time that we started the run out, we drop a pinger in the water and the next minute the submarine pops up next to you. And you load up and we go home. So the submarine going, when it's submerged, it runs at 15 knots. That's 28 kilometers an hour. When it's snorkeling, it runs at 8 knots. When it's surfaced, it runs at 12 knots. A hippo runs underwater faster than all of those. All right, the recce, I've taken you through the recce. One of the things that I didn't mention, before we went in for the recce, we went in with the submarine into the bay. And you can see in the bay here, where you see that grocer, we went into that part of the bay, periscope depth with the submarine, and we could see everything. I could see everything. I could see the MiGs taking off from the harbour behind town and things like that. And once we were comfortable with all that, we went out again and then we started the prep for the run-in to do the work. We did pick up 2 Russian ships in the harbour, but they didn't have any ELIN capability, electronic intelligence capability, so they didn't pick us up. Just on the submarine, 50 submariners plus 6 special forces crew, that's 56 members. Space like this, and to those tables there. That's the forward area. The middle is the control room, and the back end is the engine, and right at the back is the NCO's mess. That's how big it is, 56 guys in there. A month, no air. You must imagine the smell. And you only pick up the smell once you come back into the boat from outside. And there's no ability to shower inside this thing because it's internal condensation that happens all the time. The water collects at the bottom in the bilges, and you try and shower with that water. So if you've ever tried to wash your hands with distilled water, there's no lathering of soap. So, you know, twice we had to try and get rid of, or 4 times to get rid of the black beautiful. So it's quite a mission. And then we would sleep, we would hang hammocks over the torpedo areas there, and that's where we would live, and try and do exercises and that in there. So this was also a lesson, again, that we took into further operations when going to use submarines for reconnaissance. Then Drosdy itself. So Drosdy was 4 phases. Deployment of all forces to the target area. Again, a reconnaissance so that I could show every team leader exactly what we were talking about, and we had to do a land check as well. And then simultaneous attacks on the harbour and the shore targets was phase 3, and then phase 4, the withdrawal. And there was an interesting thing that if you understand warfare, if the Navy fires a shot into a country, that is a declaration of war. But there was a handwritten note given for this operation that if there was any problems and they had to use naval gunfire to support, the handwritten permission was there. Okay? That's how serious things were taken. So maybe just to step back. When we plan an operation like this and go do all the training, these operations all got approved by the State Security Council. But there's a process to get to the State Security Council. So you first have to go and present it to GOC Special Forces. They give you the task, but you go and present what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. The next thing is then it gets presented to all the arms of service who are involved. So Chief of Medics, Chief of the Army, Chief of the Air Force, Chief of the Navy, all that. And then it goes to the Chief of SADF, Jannie Geldes or whoever was in charge then. And if they approve it, it then goes to State Security Council. And we then all go back and we carry on with preparation, then the go-ahead comes and everything gets launched. That's how these operations work. So command and control, I'm just going to put that up. Key guys, Pierre Lundberg was the chief executor, the naval task leader was Jock Deacon, Hannes Venter was the operations commander, I was the tactical reconnaissance commander, Krubit Nel attack dive team 1, Krubit eventually became GOC Special Forces, Johan Hechter attack diver team 2, the raiding party Drosdy, beachhead and early warning commander during the operation, myself, boat commander Fred Wilke. We had the ships, submarine, 3 strike craft, Tafelberg, 2 helicopters on there, and we had 58 Special Forces operators. We brought in operators from one recce to assist on this. Okay. That was the makeup of the force. 6 Barracudas plus the crew, submarine, Tafelberg, 3 strike craft, 2 inflatables, 27 ground crew, 2 Pumas, and 13 divers. That was the crew. And the divers were using rebreather systems, okay? So very limited with respect to the depth that they could go because of problems with respect to bouncing and things like that. That's the team. The reason I put the team up is other oaks can't claim to have been part of this. And you'll see in the book Iron Fist from the Sea, every operation, the names are all there. So we have a big problem with the wannabes. You know,
Absolutely.
up until end of '89, there were only 480 operators qualified from '72 to '89. There's 30,000 in the pubs.
I was a Ricky.
Yeah. So the prep phase, we started the prep phase 14th of May to the 29th of May. The attack diving team did an amazing amount of work. The tactical recce team, myself, we did a lot of run-ups again with Johanna and loaded her up and things like that, but it wasn't that much important because myself and some of the guys were already used to Johanna. The 26th to the 28th May, the raiding and attack diving teams rehearsed with the Barracudas and the strike craft. So everybody then started coming together for the final rehearsals for the operation. So us, as the Oaks peanuts who are going to be on the ground and in the water, we spent many hours. Eventually, when we finished all that, we bring in the ships and we do everything then off the ships. And everything. During the day, understand it, at night, at night, at night. The dive team prep, huge amount of work that they did. And not only the dive team, how they're working in the buddy teams and setting up the buddy teams, but also the explosives. Because for every operation, depending on the targets that we were going to do, there were different designs and makeup by EMLC of this equipment. So there was a huge amount of work done in understanding how to use this kit. Because playing around with that stuff, and you'll see just now the impact of it, can lead to a serious problem. Some of the attack diving equipment, so you can see these are all the stuff that they had to wear, plus carry their mines, plus carry all their escape and evasion kit. Because for every single envisaged thing that can go wrong, there was a plan. And there were codes. And everybody knew and understood, and we rehearsed every single one of them. So, phase 1, we deployed all the forces. The 23rd of May, the submarine left. And we let her go on her own. She came and loaded, and then we let her go. We weren't going to send the tactical reconnaissance team again because of the long period. The 28th of May, my team plus Hannes Venter, we left on the strike craft to meet eventually with the submarine. On the 29th of May, Tafelberg departed. 30th of May, the strike craft left Langeman. So you can see the speed of the strike craft was, in those waters was good. And we had the period, the 12th to the 13th of June, which was the dark moon period, to launch these attacks that we were going to do. So the execution, reconnaissance and confirmed targets. On the 30th of May, the submarine was in the harbour again, did a periscope recce, and didn't pick up any major issue. There were some ozers in there, but they don't have a problem. 31st of May, in the middle of the sea, the strike craft was going, and next thing, submarine pops up next to it. We didn't have cell phones. But that's how it happened. And then we did the transfer. Everything already was on the boat, so we moved out, and we went in, I think on the on the 1st of June, we did the reconnaissance. We went in. I took the dive team leaders to their dive sites. I took Frans Fourie and Pedrito, dropped them off, and they did the walk into the target area, or the land target area. We did the final checks on the beach, and then Johan after took the final oaks in, and we had a final check on the harbour itself. We then RV'd, and we ran back, got back to the sub, and we decided there that we don't need to go and do another recce. We've got what we need. So that we picked up in February, and this just confirmed everything. So we're not going to go in again and try and maybe get compromised. 2nd of June, we RV'd 50 nautical miles off the coast, and we transferred to the strike craft, and then the submarine came and hung around the area, and the strike craft then went and met the rest of the force. So that was the recce. That's the final recce.
It's like submarines you use, those in French, Daphne.
Daphne. Yeah. That to left? Okay. So just the target areas, you can see on this picture over here, this is the harbour. These are Google Maps. We didn't have Google Maps in those days. But these are current Google Maps. And that over there is the northern side of the harbour. The dark spots there are the iron ore jetty and iron ore area, and then you can see in the bottom of the middle arrow is the oil farm area that we were looking at. I just want to go back to this slide, and I just want to put something into context. Remember the size of this bay. That bay, from the top to the bottom, 8 nautical miles. From the entrance to the bay area to the land, about 5 nautical miles. So if you take that in square miles, that's the scope of where we were operating. And I'll get to that now. So those were the target areas. So the execution was we were going to do the simultaneous attack on the iron ore jetty, the fuel farm, and the harbour. Dive team going to lay any mines on any ships that were alongside the iron ore jetty. The dive team any ships that were in the harbour were going to get mined. And then the land team went in and they had two options. Either to breach the target area and go and place mines, or what we had was RPG-7 specifically built with timers and self-destruction mechanisms that we were going to fire in, but they were going to fire in on a specific time. And we laid those from the seaside, my team on the beachhead, and that team going in. And they decided there, on the ground there, they made the decision that they didn't want to breach, so we were going to do the missile attack. The guys who were going to dive on there was an LP gas ship alongside when we came into the harbour. The guys started the deployment, and as they started swimming to that ship, it actually came off berth and started moving. If they had placed the mines on that ship, when that ship started moving, that ship would have gone. And that would have compromised everything that was going on in the rest of the bay. Doe made the decision to use the rocket propels into the oil farm and brought back all these platter charges that they were going to use, and decided he's not bringing these things back. He's an engineer, so let's make use of them. So every single train, pylon, railway thing got a charge on it. And the good thing about that thing is that we had such a bad sea going to go out that we couldn't bring the boats in. We had to dump all our ammunition there and then swim out to the boats. And that would have been another dangerous situation if we had to bring these live mines back. So it was a good thing that actually happened. In the harbour itself, the guys went in about a kilometre from the target area. They'd done surface swimming, and then they got final allocation of targets. They went into the dive mode and they approached. We had never seen during any of the reconnaissance any of the Russian ships in, and they had an anti-dive measure with respect to hand grenades that were at odd times thrown over. And while the dive team was submerged and they were approaching, this happened. Benji Burt did a bomb to the bottom. One of the dive teams pulled back because they thought it was a callback, and the rest went in and placed the mines. Came out, they had to do a bit of a rescue with Benji because of the bomb, the bounce. Eventually got picked up on the boats. The guys came back from the land operation. We had to swim them through to the boats. And obviously, the two guys who were going to do the other thing sat in the boat and wiggled their fingers because they had to just get back in and things like that. And there was one boat that had a 20mm cannon on it. Rui Janquera was the man on the 20mm cannon. And he was just praying for action that he could use this 20mm cannon off this boat. But didn't happen. So the first night that we were going to go in, everything was prepared. We did the run-in, we did everything. There was a problem on the Blythe ramp. Call off, stop, withdraw. The next day we started again, the whole process again. So in actual fact, we were going to hit it on the 3rd. We went in on the 4th. Here's another thing. If we went in on the 3rd, there were 3 Italian pleasure cruise liners in the harbour. They would have got hit. We went in on the 4th. The Russian ships and the Cuban ships were in. And you must understand, if you see a ship there, you don't know at that stage, if you're going to do the dive, what type of ship it is. You're going to hit it. So there were 3 or 4 good things that worked in our favor in this operation. So there I've run you through how the whole operation went. So I've explained all that. Dive Team 2. So when everything was finished and all the boats came together, and then we started to run out of the harbour. This whole operation, across that expanse of water, team there, land team, team on the ground, dive team, boat team, no radio comms. Everything on time. And that's how it worked. So the whole thing ran according to that principle. And when everybody was back in, we ran out, picked up on the strike craft, we loaded, and the strike craft started running. At about 5:23, we were standing on the case on the deck. Could start to see the flashes happening. 8 o'clock in the next morning, the MiGs were over a spot where they thought we were. In the morning, the submarine went back in to go and have a look. And that's what she found. The fuel farm was ablaze, excepting the LP gas tank, because we couldn't hit that ship. If we hit that ship, that LP gas tank would have made a big splash. 1 locomotive destroyed, 3 of the 4 ships were listing alongside the quay. Russian ships, Vasily Bokov and Captain Chikov, 12,000 tons bombed at the back, bottomed at the back, 16,000 bottomed completely. The Banner, Cuban ship, 6,000 tons, rolled over and sank at 10 o'clock in the morning. According to Russian literature, the 3 ships were packed with 30,000 tons of weapons and ammunition and food. Our doctrine was to lay the mines at stern, because that's where the motors are. If we had laid the mines midships, it would have been the equivalent of a nuclear explosion in that harbor. So, there's the stuff that actually happened according to the Russian literature. And this is an operation where we have got all this information through the Russian veterans, because we've all become friends. And the guys that were there have become friends of ours. And all this information has come from them. According to their records, 4 o'clock, that thing, the Chikov detonated. 5:33, the fuel farm went. Vishlibekov followed immediately thereafter. Then the Banner, 8:40, the Angolans realized it was a seaborne raid and radioed for the Rapidos. At 9:30, the 4 MiGs came out there. Here comes the interesting part. This is the pictures that the Russians had of the ships that were there. But they never took pictures of all the other stuff. And from a Russian point of view, this was attack on Russia. That's why they focused on it, because it was their ships. But it's a combined operation. Here's the impact. Gorbachev almost cut his visit to Poland short. The Premier and the USSR Council were tasked to deal with rescuing the Russian ships. They dispatched a team of Spetsnaz down to there, came down in the IL-76. This pushed the Soviet naval presence down into that area, into the coastal area. And on this operation, there were only 6 medals ever given to the 6 Russians that came down. 3-star, 3 officers. Maxim Gladov is one very close friend of ours. In actual fact, the Russians have made a movie about Maxim Gladov on this operation, on his side of this operation. And in the filming of this operation, Drosdy was taken to Russia with Maxim's mother and everything that was going on there. They came down here to South Africa and filmed with Johan Hechter, getting an understanding of how we did the diving operations and all that type of stuff. So everything that we've got around this operation is a conglomeration of our planning, our execution, the naval records, and also all the Russian input. So aftermath. First Russian government statement warned that South Africa could not go unpunished. On the 10th of June, the Russian Union said that it might demand compensation for the ships sunk by the South African attack. On the 18th of June, the Security Council voted on a draft resolution on the condemning of and sanctions against South Africa for premeditated, unprovoked attack on Namibe and the continued occupation of territories of the state. This is the impact that this thing had. The biggest impact that it had on us is that there were no further attacks or raids of this nature ever carried out by Special Forces of the Navy. So when you look at this and understand this, to have been part of this was a huge privilege and an adventure of note. So what did the South Africans say? All the blurb. In closing, and this comes from the Russian veterans, and I want to read this out loud. What they referred to and how they referred to South African Special Forces. They were a deeply specialized reconnaissance and sabotage unit capable for a long time to act in isolation from the main forces in the enemy's territory, often relying only on themselves. Commanders of the Defence Force of South Africa not only developed their own extremely effective and ruthless systems of selection and training, but also enriched tactics by specific techniques and modes of action. From a professional point of view, their experience is invaluable and unique. The book, I'm First from the Sea, that was put together by Drosdy and Arne Sulan, is currently used in the British Officers Training University and at West Point as textbook for seaborne operations. Andre Besby, who was then the OC of One Recce, in the new dispensation became the ambassador to the Pentagon. And obviously had a lot of dealing with Americans. And the Americans could not understand how our special forces could work. How could we deploy two-man teams 300-400 kilometers away, walking in with that amount of kit, walking out? They said it's impossible. I said it's not. It's done. There it is. It's there. How could you do this type of operation? South Africa. Done. And the Americans were still gobsmacked about it. So, finally, our memorial. Even if I'm called upon to perform tasks in isolation or in extreme conditions, I'm willing to pay the ultimate price. That was us. And that's the excerpt from our operator's creed. Are there any questions? So, are there any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. If the strike craft had Pumas sitting on them, how come the rest of the world didn't send up reconnaissance and know that that was there?
No, the strike craft couldn't carry Pumas. Tafelberg could carry Pumas. But Tafelberg had hangars. If you look at Tafelberg, there's two hangars on the back end. You've got the landing zone, and in there are two hangars. The blades get folded. No, weren't visible.
Do you have a record of fatalities from their side?
There weren't any fatalities on their side.
None from your side?
None from our side.
Nothing from their side?
Nothing from their
Just
side. We went to blow up infrastructure.
When you went in and you were diving, the Russians had an anti-diving, what happened there? How did they know that somebody was...
No, it was just a standard drill that they would drop grenades into the water at odd times.
At odd time?
At odd times,
And it was just unlucky.
Yeah. When you hear Maxim Gladov talk, they had all sorts of theories of who and how this operation was conducted, until they learned from us when Doe went across there and explained the operation to them. They were gobsmacked.
So you were saying that you actually personal friends of some of the Russians that
Yes.
were involved.
Yeah.
You still see them? You
Yes.
talk
We're
to them?
Facebook friends as well.
Sorry?
We even Facebook friends.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
visit each other and
Yeah.
you compare stories.
Yeah. You must remember one thing, the veterans of Angola, in the Russian context, because the Russians were not actually supposed to be there. So when you go to international politics and things like that, they weren't there. The Cubans were there. So the veterans of Angola is a group that is like being ostracized. It's like if you go to Argentina, the guys who fought the Falkland War is a group who's been ostracized by the Argentinian government.
So are those veterans of Angola, are they Angolans?
No, Russians.
Oh, Russians?
Russians.
Oh, that were there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a group in Russia called the Veterans of Angola. That's Maxim Gladov and a whole lot of the guys that were all there. And we came across them through all the mobile operations that were being done in their states by, if you go and read Hooper, Packer, and all of that type of stuff, where they came across certain of the Russians and the East Germans and things like that.
And so you still Facebook friends. Can I ask your opinion on something different now?
Yeah.
What is your opinion on the Ukraine-Russia war now? Do you think
I don't have an opinion.
and you don't know why it's happening?
And I have friends who you must remember, when we talk about Russia in here, we talk about pre the war coming down. So Russia was then Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, all of these places. So a lot of the guys came from all of these various countries. So another, you know, Vadim. Vadim is a Russian paratrooper who lives here in South Africa, also a very good friend of ours. He comes, his family is in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. And he will tell you the persecution that those Russians are getting from the Ukrainians. Yeah.
Prior to the war.
Prior to the war. You know, in 2014, there was the Berlin Agreement with respect to the whole thing about Ukraine. And there were a whole lot of things laid out in that agreement, which the Americans and NATO then disregarded and carried on supporting the Ukrainians. So I always have a philosophy: if you go and tickle the lion's ball, at some stage he's going to turn around and club you. And that Putin is the lion. They've been scratching, and he's got the mooring.
So there's always two sides.
There's two sides. There's always two sides to the story, and then there's the truth.
Yeah.
So I can't have an opinion because I don't know that side. I don't know that side, and where's the truth? I don't know.
You spoke about early on in your presentation that the special forces and you guys are still there and you're doing things properly, etc., etc. But I've sort of looked at the army currently and what's going on. Are you saying to me that there's a better part of that army?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you go and look at the paratrooper and special forces, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a different kettle of fish that sits there.
The standards haven't been dropped in those specific.
Yeah. So if you just take, and I mentioned it just now to Tony, when you go back to our national service days, the Army and Public Works had the cheapest labor to keep those bases and everything that they put up there in spick and span condition. Because we were doing gardening, we were doing cleaning, we were doing painting, stomping parade, because otherwise you got your arse kicked. Now, they don't have that. So somebody's got to do that maintenance, and that costs money. Same as the mining companies. If you go back now to the old mining companies, the old Anglo, don't look at the mine managers' houses and all the managers' houses. They were spick and span. Now the focus has changed. You don't look in Orkney and things like that at the mine managers' houses. They're buried. Same principle. So, if there are there any other questions? Kevin?
Just to what were you saying with the veterans, how we connect together now? Just to add to that, some of our guys came back with a trip with 6-1 men.
Yeah.
Where every year or every second year, they do a trip through all the battlefield areas of the operational area. And they meet up with the Angolan veterans as well. These guys bend over backwards to host them, give them parties every night and everything else. So it's amazing how they camaraderie between the two sort of veteran connections are there.
And it comes back to one thing. You must remember we were all soldiers.
True.
And all soldiers are pawns of government.
Yeah.
It's not the soldiers fighting the war. We are the instrument. The government is at war. Or the government of the day is at war. If there are no other questions, I would, yes.
One question there. As a leader, did you have like a notebook or did you write things down to sort of get it over to your guys? Or how did, as a commando, what do you guys do?
You know, the planning of these operations was unbelievable. We first started with a full assessment, a full appreciation. Then we go into the planning, and we go in with the Navy specifically into the planning cycle. Work it out. Once we've worked that out and we get certain level of approval, we then start the workups. But remember, our guys were always in the mode. So to work up into a different scenario was not a problem. So once we had finalized and discussed, then the planning and the preparation all started. And everything was planned, rehearsed, communicated. I mean, you'll see the files. The files are this thick with respect to all the planning
You
stuff.
actually said no comms and
That's the way we worked.
What time?
That's the way we worked. We planned it in conjunction with the Navy. Obviously, there's emergency comms. When things go wrong, then the things open up. And off the ship, they're monitoring the networks the whole time. But there's no burst on the network unless something goes wrong.
You said there's no comms because the Russians would have picked up the comms.
Well, you don't want to have anything that can potentially compromise you on these type of operations. So, and a lot of these things were run on times. And I come back to a point that I said earlier. If you miss your time slot, you're in the shit. If you miss your time slot, you're in the shit. You make the decision to stop. Because if this is going to take you 8 hours and you're 2 hours late, you're into daytime. And you must remember one thing. If you go and walk in Durban early in the morning in the grass, there's a spoor. Just because of dew.
So every single recce thing done at night.
Most operations are executed at night. If you look at certain of the big the infiltration of small teams, they would mainly walk during the night, lay up during the day.
Yeah, what in your opinion happened to Wayne Pretorius operation?
You heard what I said. Nobody can tell you to make a decision, and I don't actually comment any more than that. I'll tell you what the doctrine says, and that's it. It's not my place to comment about it. But I will make a comment. You will never see any of his books sold at any Special Forces function.
Just one comment. The recce's, I remember once when I was in Mozambique, the scenic area, and the recce did a night drop there.
Yes.
And one guy lost his rifle. They left it, and well, buggered off, and just left it there. He had to make his own way back to Durban. So I'm just saying the recce's were like.
Yeah. That was interesting times. It's it's a privilege to have been part of it. It was the biggest adventure. Would I do it again? Yeah.
It's your old now.
Yeah? Thanks.